We're good? All three of them?
All right, all set.
Good. All right. Good evening and welcome to this month's edition of Navy Now Webinar from the Association of the United States Navy. I am Brandon Kincannon-Coulter, a 9-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps, and I am joined here today with David Smith from Warrior Ethos. David is a retired Master Sergeant from the United States Army, Green Beret by trade, and a alum from 10th Special Forces Group and 3rd Special Forces Group, and also an alum from Georgetown University for his bachelor's and for his master's degree. Welcome, David. Can you give us a little background about yourself, a little more in-depth background, and about Warrior Ethos?
Yeah, sure. 23 years in the Army. I retired, medically retired in 2013. I was a fairly typical, military career in that, I experienced all the same things that everybody else did post 9/11. I came in 1990 and went straight to Desert Storm, lived through the peacetime 90s, and then post 9/11, was deploying and doing all those things, just like most of the rest of the military at the time. I was injured in an IED blast in 2010. Lost my left arm above the elbow and had some injuries to my right hand. But while I was at Walter Reed, I had the opportunity to go to school, to go to college, which I'd never had time to do in the military. So I had the opportunity to go to Georgetown and went and got my bachelor's degree and then a master's degree in security studies from Georgetown. And, this got done with that in 2016 or so and did some things in private business. And then the founder of our organization, Warrior Ethos, his name is Jared Shepard. He asked me to come on in 2018, asked if I would be willing to help run Warrior Ethos. Interestingly, I was one of the first members to go through Warrior Ethos when I was at Walter Reed, when I was coming close to my transition time. And so it was sort of coming full circle for me.
Yeah.
So I took him up on the offer, and I've been with Warrior Ethos now for about 2 years.
Oh, all right. All right. Being a Warrior Ethos alum yourself, that's pretty good. So engagement, education, and placement are the commitments from Warrior Ethos. Can you break down each piece of those and what they mean and look like for the interaction between Warrior Ethos and a transitioning service member?
Right. So engagement, education, and placement signify the sort of the 3 stages of transition and how we approach working with our members. Engagement is interacting with someone who comes to Warrior Ethos who's transitioning out of the military, or they just recently transitioned out of the military. And they're still needing some assistance in that regard, getting into their next career. So engagement is the piece where we get to know them. We understand their situation, their background, their certifications, their qualifications, their concerns, everything about them, about where they're at now and where they would like to be. We're very deliberate in that we're not interested in job placement. Job placement is, just finding any regular job and checking the box and calling it success. We're interested in long-term success. So we help our members identify what their career passion is. And then we chart. So that's the engagement piece of it.
Yeah.
The education piece of it is working with our members to chart a path from where they're at now to where they want to be. If they need training, if they need certifications, if they need a degree, if they maybe have those things, but they just need some experience. So maybe an internship would be valuable to them, things like that. Whatever it is, the education piece is giving them the tools that they need that will make them successful when they are pursuing their next career. And then the placement is the last part of that equation, which is working with them through partner companies and partner organizations to find opportunities for them for career placement.
Yeah.
We don't guarantee anybody a job. We don't guarantee anything. We row with our members. We don't row for them. So when it comes to placement, we help prepare them for that career and then help find opportunities for them. And we prepare them through interview prep and resume writing and all sorts of other things, so that their percentage of win, their P-win, is increased significantly when they go to apply to the different, careers, different places that they're passionate about.
Okay. So going right off of that, how does mentorship play into that? You guys talk a lot about mentorship. How important is mentorship in the military transition process?
So the mentorship, the military and the veteran community, it's like a big tribe. And so in order for, based on everything that we've seen historically, service members are more successful when they can lean on the tribe. So, and I say successful, I mean in their post-military careers. Veterans, they're more successful when they have that tribe to lean on. A mentor is a member of the tribe. A mentor is somebody that can talk to that service member while they're still when they're in that transition window of roughly a year or less from separating from the military, and could just give them pointers and things that they didn't know that they wish they had. Man, when I started my med board process, I wish I'd have known this, or when I was, getting my medical records in line, nobody ever told me this, but I'm telling you, this is really important.
Yeah.
It's that mentorship, or it can be industry related. If somebody is interested in a career in IT, well, that's very similar to saying you're interested in a career in the Army. There's
Yes.
lots of different directions that you can go within IT.
Yeah.
So being able to have somebody who's walked in your shoes that can say, okay, if you're interested in being a data manager, database manager, or something like that, they can go in and specifically describe what that career path looks like post-military, civilian career path. They can give you ground truth as to what are actual opportunities, pay rates, things like that, considerations, travel, all those sorts of things.
That's perfect. And it kind of jumps into the next question of what are the common mistakes that you see from service members or veterans when they're making their resumes or even just planning in general?
So I guess more broadly, the most common mistake that we see service members make when it comes to transition from the military is waiting too late to start. If you aren't really putting some serious thought into your transition until a month or two out, it's not too late, but it makes it very, very difficult. It makes it very, very difficult to put in, to figure out a plan and then to go after it. More broadly, or more specifically, I should say, with resumes, I'd say that the number one thing that we see service members do that they just don't always realize is being able to take what they did in the military, in the Navy or in the Marines or wherever, and translate that into something that a civilian would understand.
Yes.
Imagine yourself talking to a person who has never served in the military, doesn't know anybody that's ever served in the military, and the only thing that they know about the military is what they learn, from culture, from hear on the radio, see on TV, movies, whatever. Doesn't mean it's necessarily negative, but they just don't know what they don't know. So if you go in and you start talking to them about, I served in this command and I did this, and you're throwing everything is military jargon or military lingo, they have no clue what you're talking about. So on your resume, the first person you got to get past is the hiring manager, the recruiter, and then the hiring manager.
Yep.
If you want your resume to get past them to the people who, can actually read it and will make decisions to bring you in for an interview, you've got to speak in a language that they understand. And so that's one of the first things that we help our members with is learning how to describe all the things that they've done over the course of their time in the military in a way that somebody who doesn't know anything about the military would understand.
Yeah. I started learning this when I was transitioning also. It was one of the classes that I actually enjoyed during TAPS in my transition. And I think it was because the teacher and the instructor on this one, he actually cared, I think, and he gave us feedback and said, no, this is jargon. I don't even understand this. And I read these all the time. And then when I got out, I was able to help other people who were even civilians. They didn't even know what an action word was. So that you guys are just taking that ball and just running with it even more and continuing to teach other service members that might not have had a good instructor like I did during that resume class, to learn those action items and to be able to translate what we did, which is a lot of supervision, a lot of management, but how do you translate team leader to management? Like that's the big one. So that's fantastic. How are transitioning service members, what would your advice be for timeline wise? 6 months, a year, 2 years, before they actually EAS or EAOS out of the military?
So I'm hesitant to say that there is anything that's too early.
Okay.
But that said, about a year out is a good place to start thinking about it. It doesn't mean that a year out you need to start actively looking for jobs. That's not what we're talking about. But a year out, you need to begin to think about, what does your post-military career look like? What career field are you interested in? Are you wanting to continue the same principal duties that you're doing now in the military? Or are you going to go a completely different direction? I'm an Army guy. So the analogy that I always use is, I look at artillery guys and mortarmen. A lot of skills involved with that. I've fired mortars before. There's more skill than you would think that's involved in that. But there's not a lot of direct civilian equivalency. So most of those folks are going to go a completely different direction from their principal duties. You can begin to think about that stuff a year out. You can also begin to think about where you want to work. Mm-hmm. What types of companies do you want to work for? Would you feel more comfortable at a large company? There's pros and cons versus a small company where there's pros and cons. Yeah. And you can begin to write down. You don't have to find the answer immediately a year out, but you need to identify the questions. Yeah. And when you identify the questions, you're identifying knowledge gaps that you have that you need to make a good decision. And at Warrior Ethos, as an example, we can help our service members understand some of those questions that they need to consider. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we always say is, if you're married and you are getting out, doesn't matter if you're getting out after 6 years or if you're getting out after 30 years. Our members run from one end to the other across the spectrum. But one of the things that you need to do is write the top 10 things that are most important to you in your post-military career. Is it salary? Is it travel? Is it a sense of duty or purpose, job satisfaction? Is it culture? Is it location? Is it title? Whatever it is, and there could be more. Write all those things that are important to you and then order them 1 to 10. Have your spouse do the same thing, but you do it separately. Don't do it together. Do it separately. Your spouse may feel different about travel, as an example, than you do. Maybe not. If you might be all for traveling and doing whatever you got to do. Maybe you enjoy that aspect. Your spouse might be done with the travel. But it's something that it's a good thought exercise to begin to write those things out a year out, because it's going to save you effort and frustration as you get closer to separation, because you're rowing together in the same direction. Yeah,
I just kind of felt like I was back in the recruiter's office, getting my tags put in front of me where I had to pick my top 3. So we've kind of touched on this a little bit. what are the 3 issues Warrior Ethos sees when it comes to transitioning members? Top 3.
So again, number 1 would always be waiting too late.
Yep.
Waiting too late. Number 2 is probably, and it's a completely honest challenge, but it's a challenge nonetheless that we see a lot of our members have, is knowing your worth, knowing your value to a company, whether it's, corporate world or IT or, blue collar trades, whatever it is, knowing your worth. And then the third thing is, I go back to that list. What's important to you?
Yeah.
For some folks, it's all about salary. They will suffer through anything if the salary is what they want, because that's their motivating factor.
Mm-hmm.
For others, it's less about salary and it's more about the mission. Yeah. I need to support the mission of what I do. I need to have a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
That's the most important. For others, it's stability. I don't want to travel. I want to work 9 to 5. I want to be home with my wife and kids every day at 5:30 per chow.
Yep.
Yeah. Whatever it is, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
But those are the 3 things that you need to, that I see most of our members struggling isn't the right word, but really spend the most time figuring out.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Struggling might not be the right word for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears away from the transition. We're already out. We have an interview set up. What are the main issues or improvements you could advise for a transitioning member that has that interview for that first career?
So the first thing is, 1, we don't want your dream job to be your first interview. So we want you don't want your dream job to be your first interview, because chances are it's not going to go perfectly. It's your first interview, and you don't do a whole lot of interviewing in the military.
It's true.
Yeah. So most military folks, their default is business, all professional, rather stern, rather, just that's their default position, because that's generally the military culture, right? It's business. It's all about, mission. It's very serious.
You have to put the mask on.
Right. And obviously you want to come across as a serious person. At the same time, generally speaking, more often than not, if you're being called in for the interview, you meet at least the minimum qualifications for the job. So oftentimes you're being looked at for, are you going to fit in with the team?
Yeah.
What's your personality? Are the other members of the team going to get along with you? Are you going to get along with the other members of the team? Are you going to fit well into our corporate culture? Mm-hmm. All of those things. That's at least every bit as important as what they're looking at during the interview as it is, are you qualified on, some software, some, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's important to remember. I think it's a good confidence booster, but it's also important in how you perform at the interview, is to look, you don't know what their culture is. You don't know what the culture of the team is. You don't know what the makeup is. You don't know all those kinds of things. So relax. You've met the minimum standard. There might be somebody come in who's going to ask you some technical questions just to gauge how much technical knowledge you know. Mm-hmm. But you've met the minimum standard. You wouldn't be sitting in the seat.
Yeah.
Now it's a matter of kind of getting to know you. So relax a little bit.
Okay.
Show them who you are. When we do mock interviews, which is one of the things that we do at Warrior Ethos, oftentimes what we find with military folks, and I have been guilty of this myself, is because you walk into the interview and it's almost like you're walking in to do battle. It's like, it's serious, game face on. All right, let's go do this. I get it. But at the same time, when you're like that, you're missing cues. You're missing the unspoken verbal and nonverbal cues that might be taking place during the interview, where they just want to see you kind of lighten up and kind of see your personality a little bit. And when you walk in, like you're going into, 2:00 in the morning, flying into a mission, it's a different mentality. Relax a little bit.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to relax a little bit. Take some of the pressure off yourself.
Yeah.
And don't pin all your hopes on that one position. When you have 4 or 5 or 6 interviews lined up, you don't feel so much pressure to hit the one out of the park.
It's true. Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's the biggest thing I would say.
I am replaying every interview that I've had since I've been out, and I have done exactly that. Walked in, game face on, getting ready for a gunfight, and some of them went well, some of them went bad. Once I calmed down, they went well.
Yeah.
Once I calmed down, but if I wasn't able to be relaxed, like exactly like you said, I didn't get a call back.
Yeah.
So,
and you have some companies where it is almost, when they bring you in for an interview, it is almost all about the culture.
Yeah.
And companies like Amazon,
mm-hmm.
they want to know how you're going to fit in with the Amazon culture
mm-hmm.
and the pillars that they have. And that is almost, it's not all they're interested in, but that is a huge thing with them.
Yeah.
You can be technically competent and qualify technically. And if they don't think you're going to fit in, they're going to go with somebody else who will, and they'll bring them up to speed on the technical aspect. So,
yeah, that is, I completely see that now, because I interviewed at a company. I ended up getting the position, but I interviewed at a company when I was going to school, and that's all they cared about. They just cared if I was going to fit in with everybody. It was an outdoor company, and they just wanted to make sure I was kind of outdoorsy. I could talk to the other employees.
And coincidentally, just to add to that,
of course,
the pressure to do well at an interview decreases exponentially when you know that you've got a couple of other interviews set up and you are a month or 2 months or 3 months out from separation and not a week out from separation.
Yes.
Or better yet, a week or 2 weeks out from your terminal leave coming to an end.
Yeah.
When the paycheck stops,
yeah.
Which brings us back to the importance of starting soon.
Mm-hmm.
If you wait till later in your time, when you're coming close to your separation, you are just pigeonholing yourself and putting yourself into a corner unnecessarily, and all that presents itself as stress at home with your family. Stress, when you do get that interview, then all of a sudden everything hinges on it, at least in your mind.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be that way.
Completely agree. I like the information. So let's add in college, going to university after school. We've talked about a lot about finding a position, a career, or possibly just a job right after transitioning. What if those members are they've applied to college, they've started doing the right things, they're a year out, they've applied to college, they've taken their SATs or ACTs just in case, and they're accepted to a college. What's your advice to them going to school and then finding that career afterwards?
So this again is a decision that if you start early enough in your transition process and you identify, first off, what's the thing that I want to do? What's the career that I'm passionate about, that excites me, that's going to get me happy to get up at 4:00 in the morning to go in and do it? Identifying that as soon as possible. You might not be able to narrow it down to something specific, but getting as close as you can.
Yeah.
Broadening your range fan from 180 degrees down to something much
getting down to those 15 mils.
Yeah. That will help you answer some questions with regards to the education.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at your career field, if a bachelor's degree is necessary to even get into it,
mm-hmm.
then that's something to consider. If a bachelor's degree is necessary to advance, but not to get in,
mm-hmm.
then I'm not saying that it's not a good plan to pursue education immediately, but just look at it from your time as finite. Mm-hmm. So can your time be better spent doing something else or focusing it somewhere else? there's no right or wrong answer to it because it's different for everybody. There are some career fields where there's a mentality broad spectrum across our society that a degree is a requirement for any kind of financial success or career success. It's not true. There are lots of trades and lots of skills that don't require college degrees where you can make six-figure incomes.
Yes.
Additionally, there are fields like IT and cyber where a 4-year bachelor's degree in something IT or cyber related, it's not that it's useless, it's useful. It's a 4-year degree. But that time that it takes to get that, you definitely need to look at, would that time be better suited pursuing certifications, which in areas like IT and cyber specifically, and so many of our members are going into those fields because they're growing right now, you get more mileage, way more mileage. And executives and hiring managers are looking at your certifications in the IT and the cyber fields much more than they are a degree. Not that a degree isn't important, but you've got a certain amount of time between, let's say, a year from when you transition out. And you have 3 years left on your college degree and you want to get into the cyber field. Is it better to focus that 1 year time on the degree that you're not going to quite finish anyway? Or would it be better to take that year's worth of time and focus it towards certifications and or technical training that will directly correspond to the types of jobs that you qualify for and the salary that you'll get? And those are things that, you have to think about. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know, which is, again, goes back to it's why we exist.
Yeah, it's exactly why you guys exist. And IT and cyber, I think, is a great analogy for that. It's perfect. I have lots of friends that did the exact same thing. Like they're like, I'm a year out, I'm getting a cert. They're going to school now, but they had a career that they wanted to be in right when they got out. And then they were able to go to school. Still use the GI Bill, used tuition assistance before they got out, got that certification, and was able to continue on. So when planning for, we pretty much hit that. We talked about community service a lot earlier in our earlier conversation. Do you feel that is a main area that service members are really going towards? Community service in any type, working at a conservation company like Ducks Unlimited or Pheasants Forever, or even going into public service, being an elected official. Do you see that is a big area for service members?
I actually do see a lot of our members come through, and where this comes out, where we tease this out, is one of our staff members helps with the resume process, and one of the things that we talk about and that he brings up is the importance of not just your professional experience, but what do you do volunteer-wise? Where do you volunteer your time? Because when you speak to the culture aspect, like we were talking about at different companies, that's where they care about, where you volunteer your time. Where do you spend your time? They're going to look at your LinkedIn profile, which is a whole other thing to bring up all by itself. But that said, they're going to look at your social media footprint, and they're going to look not just at your professional capabilities and certifications, but who you are as a person. And those things are important. And I think that a lot of our members, they don't think to capture it at first, but a lot of them do. They grow up in military communities, largely military, areas right off of the coast. They help out on little league teams. They're scout masters, they're den masters, they're soccer moms. They're all these kinds of things that might not be tangible to a skill for a job, but they speak to the character. They speak to the culture. And I do think a lot of our members do that now and don't realize it. They don't think to capture it. But I also believe, and this is an organizational belief that we at Warriors Ethos believe. We believe that every service member that we can help find the career and get into the career that they're really passionate about, that they're excited about, that makes them happier. It makes them more productive. When they're happy and productive, they're better moms, they're better dads, they're better husbands, they're better wives. When all of those things are in sync, their family is happier. When their family is happier, they tend to be more positive images within their community. And I personally encourage veterans all the time that you should be involved in your local communities.
Yeah.
I don't care whether it's to go be a little league coach or, Cub Scout master, or get involved in your local town council or city council and various committees, whatever the case may be. Veterans, I think, have a unique opportunity to be a positive role model within their communities.
Yeah.
And I think being personally fulfilled in your professional career is sort of the starting point of that.
Yeah.
Because if that's taken care of, then you can begin to be that positive influence. If it's not, if you're in a job that you hate, one that you had to take because terminal leave ends in 3 weeks and I got to get something now.
Yeah.
One, what we found largely is that veterans, that the sense of purpose begins to go down. Their sense of identity begins to go down. And that positive air that they have about themselves because they're in a fulfilling career that they enjoy. When they're not, that starts that spiral.
Yeah.
And it can cause stress at home. It can cause stress in their family, stress in their personal relationships with friends. And that's where we can see proclivities towards, other areas where veterans, far too many veterans become a statistic.
Yeah.
And so, meaningful careers isn't, the secret sauce. It doesn't fix everything, but it's a good place to start. It's a foundational aspect that we firmly believe in.
Yeah. Finding that new mission, finding that
Absolutely.
new purpose, right? So what other resources does Warriors Ethos provide besides resumes, resume help, interview help? What other types of resources do you guys, or even relationships? What do you guys provide?
So one of the things that we offer, and it's kind of I don't know if it's a unique service, but it's something that we do, is we offer our new members shortly after they come into our organization an executive meeting. And an executive meeting is, there's no strings attached. There's no desired responsibilities or anything like that. The purpose of it is to have our members sit down with someone who is an executive level individual in the career field that they're interested in, and be able to speak with them about, okay, where are you at, professionally? Where do you want to go professionally? And, with the career field that you're interested in, let's talk about a pathway. Yeah. Let's just talk about a pathway that gets you from there to there. And let's look at it from the perspective of you are an individual. Yeah. We don't have a set approach to take you from point A to point B. Our services are sort of a la carte, Yeah. So what that allows us to do is to treat each individual as an individual and come up with a personalized and a customized plan for each person based on where they're at and where they want to go. And a lot of that we tease out at the executive meeting. Okay. And that again might happen with the service member when they're a year out and they approach us, or whenever they approach us. But that's one of the first things that we do, because once we know, kind of where they're at and where they want to go, then we can begin to make that pathway to get them there. And we identify, do they need additional training? Do they need additional certifications? Maybe they've got some of the training and some of the background, but they just need more experience, and an internship might be good for them. So for veterans, we help recent veterans And so in that regard, we help organize paid internships because we don't want, not getting paid for a couple of months to be a reason that you don't do an internship if it's long-term, if it makes your long-term success better. As well as we work through SkillBridge for active duty service members for internships and on-the-job training and things like that. And we help introduce them to a network of people that oftentimes just access to a network is good, particularly with LinkedIn nowadays and things like that. So, there's multiple different ways we work with them.
That just helps building those relationships for the future,
Absolutely.
right? Because there's some career fields that it is about who you know, and you might have the experience, you might have the training, but you don't have that leg in because somebody is exactly the same, has the exact same qualifications as you, but they've had a relationship with this individual for 6 years and you have had zero relationship. So I would say that's a unique, definitely a unique resource right there that you guys provide. So one last question to end it off. Any advice to recently separated or separating military members?
I guess I would take a few points of all the things that I've mentioned and narrow it down to just a few things. One, if you haven't already done it, I cannot overspeak the benefit that you get from taking 10 minutes, sitting down with a pen and paper and writing out the top 10 things that are important to you in your next career. Whether you're, a year out from transition or if you've been out for 3 months and things aren't working for you.
Yeah.
Go back to the basics. What is it you're looking for? What's important to you? And one of the things that I see a lot of people do is they spend all the time in the world saying what they don't want to do. I don't want to do this. Well, I don't want to work on a computer. I don't want to work in an office. Well, I really don't want to work around, in large companies where I'm just, another number. Man, I don't want to work in the city because I hate traffic. They come up with 100 different things about what they don't want to do. And I challenge them to come up with 3 things that they do want to do.
90% of my conversations with most of my buddies when we were in.
Yeah. And I mean, that's it. It's a thought exercise that you can't do in your head. You have to sit down with the pencil and paper and write those things that are most important to you. And once you do that, then you can begin to think about the things that you do want to do.
Yeah.
And then give yourself enough time. The less time you give yourself to transition, it doesn't mean that a year out you're scheduling interviews. No, it means that a year out you're talking with your spouse or you're having a conversation with yourself about, what do you want to do? What's important to you? What are your skills right now?
Yeah.
And then begin to work towards your goal.
Figuring that out. Yeah. If it is trying to get a certification, if it's applying to colleges, if it's doing vocational work, that's just kind of what it is. Great advice. I learned a ton today, especially the mentorship and rethinking how I look at things for the future with the tags. We all hated that when we went into the recruitment. Right. We just wanted to leave, right? So it was great talking with you, David. And I hope to do this more with Warriors Ethos. So that concludes our Navy Now webinar. And there's a link in the show notes for Warriors Ethos if you guys go to the bottom of the page. Thank you.